Alright, we are continuing this week's lecture with the endocrine system. So I'm not going to read through all these objectives, but we're going to talk about how the endocrine system helps maintain homeostasis in the body, the different organs that make up the endocrine system, and some different types of hormones. We're not going to go over every hormone of the body, but we'll touch on some of the really, really important ones. They're all important, but some of the big ones. And then we'll talk about organs that have secondary endocrine function, so they have a primary function, and then they also function as part of the endocrine system. And we'll also go over some common diseases associated with the endocrine system, and a little bit of how the endocrine system develops and ages. So we're just going to start off by doing a quick overview of the endocrine system here, and then we'll get into specific organs and the hormones they produce. So we have two different ways of signaling in our body, the endocrine system and the nervous system. And so there are some different reasons why we need these two different communication systems in the body. There's pros and cons to each of them. So nervous system signaling is going to use both chemicals and electrical signals depending on exactly what's being relayed, what information is being sent out. So it can be either or. It's going to use neurotransmitters as its primary chemical signal in the cases that it does use that chemical signaling. Usually this is going to be very, very short distance traveled through the body and very, very fast. And our nervous system is sensing and controlling both internal and external environments in our body. Whereas the endocrine system is entirely chemical signaling. These are hormones. These can travel either a short distance or a long distance, and the response time can vary from really, really slow to really, really fast, depending on how far those hormones need to get and stuff like that. And this is entirely internal signaling that's happening here. So the endocrine system is really not doing any targeting towards the external system. All right, so endocrine signaling is usually going to be a little bit less specific, so it's a more general response because the same hormone can target multiple different organs or aspects of body function, whereas the nervous system is going to be really, really specific and target one specific thing at a time generally. And so that nervous system gives us quick, rapid responses to changes in the external environment, for example, whereas the endocrine system being acting entirely on the internal system, we don't always need super, super fast changes internally, and in many cases we actually want slower, more gradual changes internally than we want really, really fast changes. And so these are both going to have their pros and cons, and they work together in a lot of ways. So our stress response, the fight or flight response, is going to involve both of these systems because they're super, super connected. So the nervous system is going to respond to whatever that danger is in the environment really, really quickly, and it is going to stimulate our adrenal glands to secrete their hormones that they produce as a response to that stress. And so that nervous system can trigger faster endocrine system responses to keep up with different changes in the environment. So let's talk a little bit about some organs of the endocrine system here, and we're going to go into a lot more detail on all of these as we go through our lectures for this chapter. But we've got some structures up in the brain. The pineal gland, thalamus, hypothalamus, and pituitary gland are all up there. Down in the neck region is the thyroid and thymus. The thymus is usually not going to be present in adults. It shrinks as we get older. Further down in the abdominopelvic cavity, we've got adrenal glands, pancreas, the uterus, ovaries, testes, all part of the endocrine system. So these are the main organs of the endocrine system, but then there's also other organs like the kidneys and the heart that are going to release endocrine hormones as well, even though they have a different primary job. All right, and so these are all going to work together in different ways to help maintain that homeostasis, and we'll get into more detail about each of these later. So here are some different examples of hormones produced by different glands. So we've got different parts of the pituitary gland producing a lot of different hormones, as you can see. We'll talk more in detail about them later. Thyroid gland, really, really important. Parathyroid gland is also going to be located in the same area as the thyroid gland. The adrenal glands are really important as part of that stress response again. Pineal gland is going to help regulate sleep cycles. Pancreas is really, really important for monitoring blood glucose levels, blood sugar levels. Testes and ovaries, incredibly important for that reproductive system function. All right, so we've talked already about feedback loops. It's been a little bit, but we're going to revisit that concept. So remember, positive feedback loops, this is increasing levels of a signal to release more of whatever substance is being released, elevating that because we're trying to tip the scales in one particular direction here. So we're going to increase production of something in order to force an event to happen, and then once that event is over, then that signaling will stop. So we've used the example of childbirth. So we release more and more and more oxytocin during childbirth, during labor, and once the baby is actually out, then that stimulus stops signaling to produce more oxytocin, and that will go back to normal. Negative feedback loops, on the other hand, we are going to try to halt the production or reverse production of certain substances because something else is increasing too much. We don't need it anymore, so we're going to negatively affect whatever is triggering that change so that it stops happening. The thyroid hormone cascade is a great example of this. So the pituitary gland can release TSH, which tells the thyroid glands to release their hormones, which is going to increase metabolism. And so those elevated levels of thyroid hormones are going to negatively signal and tell the pituitary gland to stop releasing that TSH because we have enough of those hormones. Too many of those hormones is going to throw off homeostasis and cause a lot of issues. We'll talk about those later in this lecture series. So here's an example of how that thyroid cascade works. Or actually in this case, this is adrenal glands. So we are, again, with that negative feedback loop, trying to cancel out some sort of effect. So we are trying to slow down some sort of effect that's happening. All right, we will continue in the next video talking specifically about the pituitary gland and hypothalamus.